is Nick Hill and President Abonjo. On the website, when you will have reserved your seats, it would have been Nick and a guy called Lovedev Arpega. And Lovedev, unfortunately, is ill, and he withdrew yesterday. So President Abonjo has agreed to come along this evening to be a replacement for Lovedev. So it's pay what you want tonight. So if you enjoy it, I will be collecting money from you at the end of the evening. If you don't enjoy it, I'll still be collecting, but you just won't be paying. That's the way it works. Without any more fuss or ado, what you're going to see next is Nick Hill. Nick is putting together a show that he may take on tour next year to other festivals and that kind of thing. So tonight for Nick, this is a work in progress, which is why he's got his notes on the stand here. So he'll be bringing some new material, some tried and trusted material, and just building that towards a show that he's putting together. So please join me, if you will, in welcoming Nick. The way we do that is we give as much love, support, cheers and applause as we can possibly manage at this stage of the evening. Start me off, sir. There we go.
It's lovely, because I've got to be honest, most audiences stop the applause before the acts have even got to the stage. So yeah, thank you for doing that, and it's lovely to be here in Newbury, because I'm from Gloucester, and I've got to be honest, I've never seen so many posh cars in one place, and what a beautiful audience. And when I started writing this show, it's called How Long Have I Got? I've got to be honest, I was a little bit worried about the demographic that was likely to come to this gig. But you're a perfect audience. I mean, we've got a mixture. We've got, and no offence to this side of the room, but we've got the younger element over here, and then we've got the Saga coach trip on this side of the room. So just, I mean, I think we've actually got probably only 3 people under the age of 30. Can we just have a show of hands if you're under the age of 30? On your bike, 1, yeah. And there's clearly a couple of men who've had a nasty bump on their head. You may have been under 30 once, but I think that was a long time ago, wasn't it, really? And this is really nice, because you never know what an audience is going to be like. I did a gig a little while back, a little village near Cirencester, and I just went on, so it's lovely to be here in Ashton Keynes. And this lady at the back put her hand up straight away. She said, "Excuse me, young man, I know it's spelled Keynes, Keynes, but here in the village we prefer to pronounce it Keynes. Is that okay?" No, that's absolutely fine. Does make you sound like a bit of a pretentious can't. To be fair, it was fairly good advice, because the following week I was doing a gig in Leclerc. And in between Cirencester and Leclerc, I did a gig in Swansea, and you never know what you're going to get. And I think at the Swansea gig, the MC had clearly overdosed on too much live at the Apollo, because I was backstage waiting to go on, and I could hear him out the front. "Ladies and gentlemen, go wild, whoop, holler, clap your hands, stamp your feet, raise the roof as we welcome to the stage the brilliant Nick Hill." And I went on, and there was 4 people sat there. There was a grandmother, a grandson, and the mother, and both ladies were absolutely distraught, because apparently the son was going to go in the army. And then we found out he was only going as an administrator, so I don't know if they were worried about it. But I left those alone. And then there was a guy sat pretty much where you were. So I said, "So what's your name, mate? What's your story?" He said, "Oh, my name's Roger Moore." I thought, "Oh, brilliant, comedy gold." And he quickly followed it up with, "I've got mental health issues, I don't know what I'm doing here." So I had to leave him alone. I've got to be honest, So when Graham first rang me, he said, Nick, I'm putting together this comedy festival. Would you like to take part? I said, yeah, that'd be brilliant. What do I need? He said, well, you'll need about a 30-minute show. And I said, well, I haven't got 30 minutes. And he said, well, how long have you got? And that was actually for the title of the show. And I said, well, to be honest, Greg, how long I've got will depend on how quickly I talk. But the show is called How Long I've Got. And again, looking at the demographic in this room, I think there's quite a few of us that this is probably a daily topic that goes through our minds. I'm not looking at anybody apart from the 5 people in the corner over there, but in comedy, if you go and see a lot of comedy, if you go and see some of Graham's gigs, you may well have seen some acts turn to Graham about 10 minutes into their set and go, Graham, how long have I got? Right, and the reason for that is, when you do comedy, you get allocated specific times, so you start off doing 5 minutes, then 7, then 10, then 15, then 20, then 30, and a lot of acts can't be asked to time their set, and they rely on people like Graham as the MC to ask how long they've got. But in this context, how long have I got is literally that. I'm 67 this year, and I'm finding it's just a question I'm asking myself daily of how long have I got? And again, just going back to the comedy thing, there's people in comedy that do outstay their welcome, right? And I'm sure we've all got people like that we know who outstay their welcome. Looking around the room, that might be a bit closer to home than some of you might like. You know, we've got kids back from uni, we've got in-laws, we've got people who come to a party and you'll ask them, would you like a drink before you go? Expecting them to say no, and then they say yes. And they're stuck with you for another 2 hours. And then you've got the holiday buddies, you know, and we've all been there probably in the 70s. And it was a lot of you kids, you won't know this, but in the 70s, when we used to go on holiday, it was a lot easier to lie to people because we didn't have social media, and people would say, oh, keep in touch, and we'd say, yeah, drop in if you're passing, and you give them a false name, address, phone number, and they wouldn't have it. But now, like, they just track you down. They're like the Liam Neesons of the holiday world, right? But literally tonight, how long have I got does mean that. I've just got to that stage. I don't know. I don't know how long I've got left on this earth. I'm sure we've all been touched by people who've been taken too young, who've died tragically young. And people say you should live each day as if it's your last, right? That's fine in theory. For the last month, I've been on steak and chips every day, 3 bottles of red wine, and as much chocolate ice cream as I can possibly eat. And I'm now on bloody statins. It's just, but I'm reminded daily, because I retired in I think I retired in 2023. So we do spend a fair amount of time in the afternoon watching daytime TV. Is there other people in this room that does that? You lying bastards. Because you're reminded of how old you are. It gets to about 3:30, 4:45, and then the adverts will start, and it's all innocent enough, isn't it, to start with? Stair lifts. And then ladies advertising walk-in baths with one-piece swimsuits. I used to, when I was a kid, about 15 or 16, I don't mind telling you, I had a thing about older women. I thought they were brilliant. And they could be 10, 15, 20 years older. And at 15, 20 years older, they'd only be 35. I'm now 67. That ratio definitely... Apart from Mary Berry, of course. Have we got any other Mary Berry fans? Well, there's a lot of people in denial in this room, clearly. But you have got to be prepared, because you know you just don't know when the end is coming. And me and my wife, we've discussed it. So we've started a little book called What to Do When I Die. And to be fair, she's been pretty good. So she's putting all the information about the banking, about the energy, about all the bills. She's absolutely brilliant. And I said, what information would you like me to contribute? So I only need 2 things off you. I said, what's that? She said, the PIN number to your phone and laptop. Right? Well, that's not happening. Absolutely But I'm also reminded about how long I've got left, because we've got kids, well, they're not kids, they're like 40, 43, 44. Eventually I will remember their names, but they all get treated the same, to be fair, all get treated exactly the same, with utter disdain. But when they come round, they'll look at round the house and they'll say, what's that there? What? Is that new? Yeah, and it might be something simple like a vase or a piece of art. They call it death ornaments, right? Yeah, are we aware of that? Because it's like, look at this shit you're buying. We've got to clear all this up when you're gone. But I've worked out a way to really start winding them up, because when they come round, I manipulate the conversation round to money and spending. Right? And you can all try this at home if you've got kids. I guarantee this will wind them up. Just say, well, you can't take it with you, can you? They go into absolute orbit, to be fair. And they're like, no, you can't take it with you, but you could leave it with us. So I've also, my wife thinks I've got health anxiety. And again, I think probably when I got to 60, I think it sort of started kicking in. You know, I get slightest little twinge, and that's it. I use that brilliant medical research tool that probably all of us use, Google. That's absolutely lethal. Don't use Google to research what you've got wrong with you, because all the answers are exactly the same. Basically, we're all going to die. That's it. Doesn't matter what you've got, we're all going to die. But I am pretty good at going to the doctors, so if I've got anything wrong, I'll phone the doctors straight away. And that's all changed. And kids, you won't know this, but back in the day, in the 60s, doctors used to do house visits. Right? They used to come to your house, and it was like royalty visiting. My mother used to clean the house from top to bottom. If the doctor was coming, he'd knock on the door, she'd present him with a plate of cucumber sandwiches, bone china, tea, and then he'd spend 2 to 3 hours upstairs on his own with a patient, barely conscious, with the door locked. And I don't wonder why house visits were stopped. I think the answer is there. But trying to get to the point now. I don't know what your doctors down here are like, but in the Quedley medical practice where I am, I think the receptionists have obviously been trained by the Gestapo, because you've got to go through a raft of questions before they'll even let you in to see the doctor. And when you do go in now, we've got one of those self check-ins. So you go in and it's a touch screen, and it's just, are you male? Yeah. Enter your date of birth, you enter your date of birth, and it comes up with your name. Pretty simple. And I was there the other week, and I checked in, and I went and sat down. This little old lady came in, and I could see her. She was pressing these buttons and kept tutting. She was there for about 5 minutes. So I went up, I said, are you all right? She said, oh, I can't find myself. Okay, well look, you're female, yeah. What's your date of birth? She gave me a date of birth. That's your date of birth. Came up with a name, Alice Jones. There you go, Alice Jones. Said, no. I said, well, let's just try it again. I said, female, yeah, date of birth, yeah, Alice Jones. She said, no. I said, what do you mean? No, clearly that's you. So well, my name is Alice Jones, but everybody calls me Dolly. Bless her. And the doctors, they know you've been on Google. And I don't know if your doctor does this, but my doctor now, when I go in, I'll sit down, and he'll say, okay, I'll go, yeah, fine. So what do you think's wrong with you? And you'll come up with the most ridiculous thing that you found on Google, some bloody African tropical disease that affects 1 in a million. And he takes the piss out of me because he goes, could be that. And then he just leaves me hanging, but highly unlikely. And I think he's on a WhatsApp group, and at the end of the week, all the doctors share their most ridiculous stories of the week. But I don't always go to the doctors if I'm ill. Sometimes I'll preempt that. So I went a couple of weeks back and went in, sat down, the doctor said, what are you here for? I said, well, I'm hoping you know, I've come for a prostate check. He went, oh, okay. What are your symptoms? I said, well, I haven't got any symptoms. He said, you haven't got any symptoms? You come for a prostate check? I said, yeah, but all the TV adverts tell me I should, stay ahead of the game. And he's like, okay. And he looked absolutely annoyed, I've got to be honest. And then he said, do you know what's involved? And I was sort of half tempted to go, no, surprise me, but I thought in the frame of mind he's in, I'm not going to do that. Anyway, I hopped up on the couch and he did the business and I got off and he said, well, I'm pleased to say your prostate's really squidgy. What? I said, is that a good thing? He went, oh, no, that's brilliant. He said, because if it was hard, it means we've got a problem. Okay, so I can rest assured. Then he said, well, you can. We can't be 100% sure unless we do a blood test. Okay, I'll have a blood test. He said, well, we can't do that today, so I'll have to book you in for an appointment. I said, okay, book me in for an appointment. So he said, okay, I'll book you in. It's going to be week Monday. Now, on the Sunday night, what you need to remember is no alcohol, no smoking, no recreational drugs, no heavy lifting, no exercise, no sexual intercourse. And then the last bit, and I'm sure he winked at me when he said it, was, and no masturbation. And I went away and I thought, was he indirectly calling me a wanker? And I thought, well, actually, to be fair, I'm the one that's gone to a complete stranger with no symptoms and allowed him to stick a finger up my ass, so maybe. But getting on as well, I've sort of, I wonder, is there anything else out there? Is there an afterlife? I don't know. And I've got to be honest, I've had a few strange things happen. The weirdest thing was, and this was quite some time ago, I was out in the garden, cutting the grass, stopped the lawnmower, and I could hear this music blaring out. And I thought, somebody's pretty inconsiderate on a Sunday morning. Carried on cutting the grass, finished, it was still blaring out. And I went into the house and the TV was on at a full volume, right? So I thought, that's really weird, because I didn't have a cat, didn't have a dog, nobody else in the house, but the TV was on. Phoned the TV rental company and they said, that can't happen. Well, it has happened. And then when we moved into this new house, my wife got into bed, and as she got into bed, she said, oh God, the bed feels soaking wet, and she pulled the bedclothes back, and there was an absolute perfect circle, a wet patch on the bed. She said, what are you doing? You must have sat on the bed. Have you had a shower? I said, no, I've not had a shower. Well, you must have done, because there's this wet patch, and we looked up and the ceiling was fine, and there was nothing else. And I couldn't explain what this wet patch was. And I've written this bit and realised there's absolutely no fucking punchline to it whatsoever. But never mind. But it has, I'm going to have to cross that bit out now. That's quite disappointing, that, because I was hoping that would go down far better, but it doesn't mean anything, does it? What? And when I rehearsed this in the garage yesterday, I thought the same thing. I thought, that's just shit, that needs to come out. And rest assured, Newbury, it will come out. That's, unless anybody's got anything they want to contribute towards that as a possible cut. I'll tell you what we'll do, right? If you could have a think about it, think about a punchline to that little section, and in the interval, come and tell me, and the best one, I'll buy you a drink. Is that all right? It's not just all about me, you're going to have to work as well. But it did get me thinking, if there's an afterlife and is there anything else. And I used to be, I don't know if anyone else is like this, but I used to be really worried about death, about dying. And I was talking to one of my girls at work. And she said, you all right? I said, no, it really bothers me about dying. She said, okay. She said, well, remember that time before you were born? And I went, no. She said, well, it'll be like that. And I thought, that's lovely, isn't it? And that's given me a lot of peace since then. But I've got, don't take this the wrong way. I don't care what your religious beliefs are. I struggle with the whole God thing, the creation, the fact that potentially there's this being up there somewhere. Don't look out the window. Graham already warned you about that. Your ladies, is that more interesting? What's going on there? Graham, these ladies are looking out the window.
A beautiful young man, I'm afraid.
A beautiful young man. Oh, I can see why those Golden Girls were looking out the window then. But I don't know, I just struggle with this whole God creation thing, the fact that somebody created the world in 7 days from absolutely nothing. I mean, and as kids at school, we're taught, well, it's in the Bible, so it's got to be true. But then by the same token, there's probably people in here that read the Daily Mail and Express and follow exactly the same mantra. But the one thing I am pretty certain about is if there is a God, or there was a God, as sure as eggs are eggs, there's no way was he British. Like, can you imagine that? A British God getting the contract. Day 1, turns up late. Day 2, turns up on time, but 11 o'clock says he's got to go down to the builders for supplies and can he give him some money. Day 3, turns up, does a full day work, that's absolutely brilliant. Day 4, doesn't turn up at all. Day 5, Friday, turns up and at 12 o'clock announces he's off down the pub with his mates. And when you challenge him about, well, hang on a minute, the contract says you've got to create the whole world in 7 days, he's like, well, I don't work weekends. And I think if there is a God, there is only one nationality that God could be. To have got the world created in 7 days, on time and within budget. And I hope there's some Polish people in here this evening. And it made me think, what was he doing beforehand? Was he practicing, are there a load of fucked up planets somewhere? Like with people with like 2 heads, 8 fingers on one hand? And if you travel down to the forest of Dean where I'm from, you'll see him. And how did he come up with all those names? Like, created something. Yeah, that looks like a hippopotamus. Where did that name come from? Do you know, I know I created a hippo. I reckon that would look far better with a big horn on it, and I'll call it a rhinoceros. Again, I thought that bit would go down far better. And he created a horse, and he looked at the horse and thought, do you know what? It's all right. I reckon if I put some black and white stripes on that, that'll be absolutely brilliant. And then if I take the black and white stripes off and just scale it down a little bit, give it some big ears, make it a little bit impractical, that'll be a donkey. And clearly, he was thinking ahead. Because as we all know, the donkey carried Mary, Joseph and the baby Jesus into Bethlehem, which was lovely. And again, if you believe all that, you are probably a Daily Mail and Express reader, but we'll skate over that. Because I struggle with that whole Jesus, Joseph, Mary thing. And I challenge any bloke in here, right? If you've got married, you've not consummated the marriage, and your wife comes home and says, got something I need to tell you. What is it? I'm pregnant, right? And it's actually the Son of God. Right? Most blokes would go absolutely loopy at that, absolute bollocks. But no, if we are to believe the Bible, Joseph just goes, okay, fair enough, and that's it, just accepts it. That bit's coming out as well, but never mind. But you believe what you want to do, you know. But we don't know much about Jesus's early life, okay? Because the only thing in the Bible about Jesus's early life is in Luke chapter 2, verse 40, and it says, "And the child grew and became strong, and he was filled with wisdom and the grace of God which was on him." That's it. That's the only bit of information we know about Jesus' early life. And I reckon when he went to school, he would have been a little bastard. An absolute little. Can you imagine being him his teacher and trying to give him detention? I wouldn't do that if I was you. Really? Why not? I'll get my dad on to you. Yeah, well, actually, I'm not afraid of Joseph. No. I mean my real dad. Obviously a lot of religious people in the room tonight. That's fine. Please excuse these notes. Look, these are, as Graham said, this is a work in progress. So I've had to write these out by hand. But there's other things I find that reminded me about how long I've got. I'm finding more and more people I bump into are talking to me in code. Right? But the code they use is, "You're looking well." What that really means is, "I'm surprised you're still alive." That's what it means. And when I retired, I didn't realise, and retired people in here, can I just have a show of hands who's all the retired people? Really? Are you two not retired? Not yet. You wish. But the retired people will vouch for this. I didn't realise when you retired, apparently it's obligatory to spend 4 days out of 7 at the local garden centre. Right? We go to one near us, and I went last year on my birthday in August, because that's how rock and roll our life is now. And I paid for the coffee, and we got a loyalty card, and I gave her the loyalty card. And she went, "Oh, congratulations, birthday boy." I said, "How'd you know that?" She went, "It's come up. It's your birthday, isn't it?" I went, "Yeah." She said, "Well, that's good news, isn't it?" I went, "No, not really." She said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I'm 66 this year, and the average life expectancy for a physically fit male in the UK is 81. So at best I may have 15 years to go. So please tell me, what's good about it?" And then she said, "Will you now qualify for one of our senior citizens discount cards?" And I'm thinking, just fucking shoot me now. And I grabbed the card, and it was free. And I was walking back, and I sat down with my wife. She said, "What have you got there?" I said, "Oh, it's a senior citizens discount card." She said, "Well, how much does that cost you?" I said, "Well, it's free." She said, "Are there any benefits to it?" I said, "Yeah. Yeah, looking at this, you get 40% off a roast lunch on a Monday." And you do. You get 40% off a roast lunch on a Monday. And then I read the small print. Served between 9:30 and 11:15 a.m. And I thought, who the hell eats a roast lunch every Monday between 9:30 and 11:15 a.m? Well, since last August. But the other thing that's, a couple of other things that's reminded me about how long I forgot is I'm finding now I'm attending far more funerals than I am doing anything else. And I'm hearing this a lot. People say, "Oh, he went how he wanted to go." Right, and I know how I want to go. I want to die at home, in my bed, peacefully, in my sleep. I certainly don't want to be out shopping in Tesco's or out driving the car with family and friends. And I certainly don't want to go whilst having sex, because if my wife found out, she'd absolutely kill me. And daytime TV has also, again, paid a bit of a, what's the word I'm looking for? It's paid a bit of a, it gives me information about how old I'm getting. Because as well as Stannisdale lifts and walk-in baths, we also then, that moves on slightly. That's just the bit in the beginning to lure you in. Because then you get free life assurance over 50, don't have to qualify. That's fine, that's quite a nice gentle introduction. And then it's funeral plans and simple cremation, right? Now I know a little bit about funeral plans, because when my mum died, she had a funeral plan with the co-op. And as the last surviving son, I had to go in and sort it out. And I went in, sat down and said, "I'm Mick Hill, Jean Hill's son, come talk about a funeral plan." She said, "How old are you?" Straight away, "How old are you?" I said, I'm 61, what's that got to do with it?" "Well, have you got a funeral plan?" I went, "No." "Well, you should, because you could go at any time." So, "Oh, great, thanks for that." She said, "Do you know what it entails?" I said, "Well, no, not really." She said, "Well, if you pay us £4,000 now, we can organise everything for you. So you could choose to be cremated or buried. You could decide where you want the wake. You could put some money over the bar. You could say if you want food. You could get people to wear in fancy dress. You could have a band, a disco, a magician. Whatever you want, you can have, and we can sort it all out." We had a conversation for about 10 minutes, and at the end of it, I was actually looking forward to the day. But Mum did die in 2019, and she certainly didn't know how long she had left, because she had dementia. And this next bit, don't worry if anyone's got family or friends affected by dementia, this isn't a bit about taking a cheap jibe at dementia. But she'd never seen me do stand-up. She knew I did it, but she'd never seen me do it. And she said, "When I die, will you talk about it after I've gone, as a way of keeping my memory alive?" So if none of you laugh at this last bit, you are all going to hell. What I need to tell you, if you're not aware of dementia, is there's 3 main traits that dementia sufferers have. Right? They're paranoid. Mum thought people were living in their roof. They tend to lose things. And Mum used to think that the people living in the roof were coming down and stealing her bank cards and her car keys and stuff. They weren't. She was hiding them. She saw the people in the roof, and they wander. Right. I need to put something into context, otherwise this is going to make me sound absolutely heartless. When I was born, my mother wasn't in a good place. She was an alcoholic. She was drug dependent, and I was taken off her, and I didn't go back to her till I was 4. So I didn't have a maternal bond with her, which, to be honest, towards the end, that really helped. She changed to being a Catholic in 1974. She stopped drinking, and from then on, to be fair, she devoted her life to the Catholic faith, and it was brilliant. It absolutely got her through. And there's no point arguing with somebody with dementia, because in their world, what they see is true. Okay, so just remember the Catholic faith. I went round one Saturday morning, and she was up, dressed, sat in the chair, which was unusual. I said, "You okay?" "Yes." "You had your breakfast?" "Yes." "The nuns gave it to me." "Did they?" "Yeah." I said, "What nuns were those then?" "Well, there were 3 nuns sat by my bed when I got up." "Okay, there were no nuns. They gave me tea, toast, bacon and eggs, mushrooms, fried bread, nothing, absolutely nothing." "Okay, fair enough. How do you think these nuns got in then, Mum?" "Well, I don't know, they probably came in through the window." Right, now, she lived in a bungalow, so that was potentially plausible. I thought, I'm just going to see how far I can push this. "You know those keys you keep losing?" "Yes." "You don't think the nuns stole them, do you?" And without blinking an eye, she went, "The thieving bitches." On another occasion, it was a November night, and I've got to be honest, around about 2018, the end of 2018, early 2019, and this is going to sound horrible, but I really thought she'd be better off dead, because she was in some sort of torment. And I went round, it was a dark November night, all the house lights were off, the door was locked, which again was fairly unusual, so I went in, turned the hall light on, and called out, "Mum." Nothing. Went into the lounge, turned the light on. "Mum." Nothing. And her bedroom was off the lounge, and I could see into her bedroom, and I could just see her legs on the bottom half of the bed, still. And I've got to be honest, at that moment in time, I was thinking, is this it? Has she gone? And I didn't know whether to be relieved or upset. It was just all sorts of emotions going through my head. I thought, if she is dead, would it matter if I didn't report it till the morning? Because Gloucester Rugby were on Sky Sports at 7 o'clock. And I hadn't pressed record. And I thought, I can get home to watch this. I thought, I better check. So I went in, and she's just laid motionless on the bed. Turned the lights on. She suddenly sat bolt upright. I nearly pooed myself. She did. I then had to spend the next 3 hours cleaning her up and calming it down. So I thought, oh, maybe there is a God and he is watching. But she last wandered on September the 13th, 2019. And I was at a party, and I got a phone call from a neighbour saying, "Your mum's gone and we don't know where she is." It's okay, fine, leave her with me. I phoned the police. Gloucester police were brilliant. They picked her up literally in about 20 minutes, took her into Gloucester Hospital, and they kept her in. On the Sunday, I got a phone call from PC Mark Davis to say, "I'm your mum's safeguarding officer. I need to come and check if she's all right. Can you meet me at the hospital tomorrow at 6:30? "Yeah, that's fine." So I meet him at Gloucester Hospital, 6:30 the following night, and we're just walking up to the ward. So, "How long have you been in the police?" I said, "Oh, about 15 years or so." "How long have you been safeguarding?" He went, "Not long, I've only been doing it about 6 months." I said, "Okay, what's your knowledge of dementia sufferers like?" He said, "Not a lot, I haven't come across many." "Okay, word of advice, don't believe a word she says." So we get up to the ward, and Mum's in the first bed here, and there's about another 4 ladies, and they've all got their families round, all chatting. "All right, Mum? Mm-hmm. Who's that?" "All right, this is PC Davis." And he's like, "Have you come to arrest me?" And he's like, "No, Jean, I haven't come." She said, "It's Mrs. Hill to you." "No, I haven't come to arrest you." "Right. Well, have you come to arrest Nicholas?" No, why would I be arresting Nicholas? Well, he's only just come out of prison because he murdered his brother. I'm like, Mum, Tim died in 2009, if you remember. He was only 49, he had ischemic heart disease. Can you remember that? Well, you would say that, wouldn't you? Yes, that's because it's true. By now, the atmosphere in the room was a little bit like this, quite subdued. And most people were listening. Some had switched off, a bit like now. And there was silence for about 2 minutes. And then she came out with, and he made me have sex with him before we were married. I was like, oh, this woman across the way, that is disgusting. Someone, it didn't happen. Look at her, she's not Welsh, doesn't know what she's saying. I grabbed the police and I said, I can't deal with this anymore. We've got to go. No, that's fair enough. And as we get into the door, this bloke opposite went, hang on, mate. What? No, sorry, I've missed a bit there. Because if I tell you this next bit, it won't make any sense at all. As we were getting to the door, under her breath, and to this day, I don't know if she knew what she was saying, but she just went, and loud enough for everybody to hear, it's that poor dog I feel sorry for. And we got to the door, and I'm just about to go through, and this bloke's like, hang on, mate, have you got a dog? I can't answer that. And we got outside, and I said to the policeman, I'm really sorry you had to experience that. He went, no, that's fine, I can see she's not well, she's in a pretty bad state. But I do need to ask you a question. I said, I didn't murder my brother. He went, no. I said, obviously, he said, no. Have you got a dog? And unfortunately, the answer to that question had to be yes. And he just looked at me as if to say, wonder what else you said was true then. Listen, Graham, how long have I got? No, it's time. That was the end joke. You've been an absolute delight. Thank you very much for listening to me rabbiting on. My name's been Nick. Good night.
Thank you. So,